Female prophet killers tend to be very methodical. They plan out their crimes very well. Put a lot of thought into it and how they're gonna do it. How they're gonna get rid of the evidence. What stories are they gonna tell? Quite a bit goes into it. Oftentimes they're killing people close to them and they don't get caught for years.
In a remote field in Norway stands a silent reminder of a deadly woman.
It's not to celebrate her, but to mark where one of the worst female mass murders in the world was born.
For a century, residents of the small village of Selbu have lived in the shadow of their infamous resident, Belle Janis. Headmaster Torget Storseth has two great passions. One is teaching. The other, his search for the truth behind the Norwegian serial killer.
My father told me the story about Belle Janis. She was clever at school, but she might be characterized as an outsider among the children. So it might be an illustration that she was easily angered.
In the late 19th century, an angry young woman left the chill of Norway for a new life in America's Midwest.
Well, a lot of Norwegians went to America. We were a poor, poor country, and they went to seek their fortune, seek new opportunities.
Torget has come to LaPorte, Indiana, to solve the mystery preoccupying his village to this day.
They are curious, I think. How could a woman from our area become one of the worst female serial killers in the world? Hello.
Welcome to LaPorte County Historical Society.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Torget.
Good to see you.
Author Sylvia Shepard has chronicled Belle's crimes and is anxious to share notes with a fellow seeker from Belle's hometown.
It's been said that she probably killed in the 40s, close to 40.
The pair meet at the local museum, where some of Belle's handiwork is kept.
I understand that it is Scandinavian because I had an archaeologist look at it, and he said from the forehead and the way that it's shaped that it was indeed Scandinavian.
The skull's identity is unknown.
And right here it even says, found in the outhouse at the Janis farm.
It could be any of the lonely men who strayed into Belle's trap.
She wanted Norwegian men, so she advertised in a Norwegian newspaper called the Scandinavian. See, many of these men had come over from Norway, and they wanted a woman, a wife, you know, somebody, companion.
Belle was a good catch. She had profited from a string of insurance claims. She'd lost a candy store to fire, and two husbands in suspicious circumstances.
Belle had 48 acres here, chickens, pigs. You know, she advertised and said that she had all this. And she did have all that. She just didn't include what she did with the people. She had an allure. Many men came and thought they weren't going to be staying, but they did.
In 1908, one victim to fall for Belle was Norwegian Andrew Helgeline.
He was just one of those people that answered one of her ads.
Convinced his future would be here with Belle, Andrew surrendered his life savings, $3,000.
She kept men here even when they came here and didn't intend to spend the night, or they stayed and they went back and got their money and came back.
By the time Andrew Helgeline settled in LaPorte, Belle had 3 foster children to raise. The farm's income was modest, so her new man's savings were a windfall. But this homely scene was a prelude to death.
Female serial killers frequently use poison as their weapon.
Former FBI criminal profiler Candice DeLong, with 20 years' experience, recognizes Belle's business plan.
They don't have to get close to the victim, they just have to get close to their food. And strychnine is something that one would expect to see on a farm.
Strychnine was commonly used as rat poison.
Strychnine is a phenomenal compound. It comes from the seed of a tree in India.
Forensic pathologist Dr. Janis Amatuzio, based in Coon Rapids, Minnesota, knows strychnine's inevitable results.
It antagonizes or stops the inhibitory reflex so that all of the reflexes of the stronger muscles, the flexor muscles, are exaggerated. What an individual who takes strychnine will feel is initially perhaps a sense of anxiety or nervousness. Then they'll notice muscle twitches and muscle spasms. And then they actually get into almost a seizure-like state where they have convulsions. These contractions are painful. And the victim is conscious throughout this whole process and probably terrified.
It would take 2 types of people to be able to watch that. A sadist would probably enjoy it, or a cold-hearted individual for whom killing was no big deal. The greater gain, getting their money, was worth whatever they had to do to get it.
But Belle's treachery would go much further. It would rank among the most grisly crimes in Indiana's history. In LaPorte, Indiana, Belle Gaines seems to have shared that chilling facility. Belle's story took a mysterious twist one spring evening.
There was a handyman that was in that house, and when he went to bed that night, the occupants of the house were Belle and 3 children. The fire began at about 4 o'clock in the morning.
The Gaines farm was razed, its occupants consumed. The only survivor, Belle's handyman.
When they got down through the ashes into the basement, there were 4 bodies there, 3 children and a female.
And there was more. Investigating the fire scene, workers noticed soft spots around the farm and began to dig.
They would find all of the victims wrapped in gunny sacks, parts of them. They had been all dismembered, fit into these sacks with lime. There were children that were in her care, and of course the men who came to visit her and never got away.
Among the victims would be Andrew Helgeline, the partner wooed from Norway.
They found him in a garbage pit where Belle had carried garbage, fish heads, tomato cans. It smelled terrible. That was the excuse for the smell.
other human bones suggest the Gaines farm pigs helped conceal further victims.
I think the fact that Belle threw the body parts of her victims into a pig trough is a pretty good indicator as to the type of person that she was, how she felt about these men that she killed. What kind of final send-off is that for someone that was a human being to throw their body parts in a pig trough? Well, that's the kind of person she was. She didn't care. That's where she thought they belonged.
Altogether, 14 bodies were found, including Belle's foster children.
Probably she had given poison to her 3 children and killed them. Maybe with a hammer blow too, because there was found holes in their skull after the fire. How could a mother do a thing like that?
There's another mystery. Did Belle perish in the fire? The only adult female body left few clues.
At that time, they thought it was Belle dead in the fire.
But the body was smaller than Belle's. And inexplicably, the skeleton was headless.
There is no logic to the fact that there were her children's skeletons intact, and then the one adult skeleton, which one would think would be hers, the head is missing. And the head, of course, would be the one part of a skeleton that would have the most identifiers.
Was this just another of Belle's insurance scams? Tourgette's search for the truth is not yet over. By 1908, Belle's American adventure had come to a grisly end. 14 bodies were found on her farm, many chopped into pieces. Townsfolk were desperate to know what happened.
Hello, welcome to LaPorte, Indiana.
Thank you very much.
In the circuit court.
The Belle Gunness case is something that is probably a major part of the history of this whole town.
Judge Robert Gilmore's predecessor presided over LaPorte's most infamous trial.
The skeletons were in somewhat of a fetal position, somewhat clenched.
The fire's heat might explain it, but skeletons buried beyond the flames were also contorted.
And then the argument became whether or not it may have been strychnine that caused the bodies to clench and get into the fetal position.
Strychnine, basically what it does is it causes the stronger muscles to overcome the weaker muscles. So the hand will flex at the wrist, the arm will flex at the elbow, and the elbow will flex at the shoulder. And likewise the legs. The legs will contract and flex in a position such as this.
Strychnine was confirmed in the stomach of Norwegian lodger Andrew Helgeline. Belle was exposed as a murderer. But there was one more mystery. Did the serial killer perish?
The whole trial centered around whether or not, in fact, it was the body of Belle Gunness that they found in the remains of the fire, or whether, in fact, it may have been some other third party, we know not who.
In this courtroom in 1908, jurors heard how the headless body seemed too small for Belle's large frame. One theory was the fire had shrunk the body.
Well, you know, they tried to say that just like a roast, this body cooked up and got skinny then, you know, skinnier than Belle was. But the children were still the same size. And their heads were all down there.
Despite conflicting evidence, jurors found the headless body was Belle Gunness, but many believed otherwise. And 23 years later, there was one more twist. In LaPorte, Indiana, the crimes of Belle Gaines paid handsomely.
When they tried to tally up how much money she might have gotten, because this was all about money, they thought it was probably close to $52,000, which would have been hundreds of thousands today. We're standing at the grave of Andrew Helgeline. He was the last male victim that Belle killed here.
As Norwegian Torget Sturseth pays respect to his countrymen, he struggles to find forgiveness.
Everybody has to be forgiven, but you can't forgive what she really did to those men. She had to be sick or mentally ill in a way, I don't know.
I think there was a lot more motivating Belle than simply money. And I think that's exhibited in the method of death that she chose, a painful poisoning. Then, chopping up their bodies and throwing the body parts into a pig trough shows utter contentment for men. I would say it was men in general she had a problem with.
Maybe hated men because the father abandoned her, as the rumor says.
Torget still has questions. The biggest of all, was Belle really killed in the farm fire?
There was a real division within the community as to whether or not she died in the fire or whether she escaped and basically was on the run.
I absolutely believe that she escaped. The head was never found to that female body. She had a whole week to get away between the time when the fire was discovered and then the first body in the ground was discovered.
23 years later, a local newspaper speculated that this Californian murderer, fitting Belle's projected age, could be her.
Then they sent a picture back here, taken in a very strange pose with her hands like this. Well, why would you take a picture that way? I think that's why she did it. She's clever.
If Belle did feign her death, there could well have been more victims.
It is unlikely that her murderous behavior would stop. Being a fairly young woman at the time, less than 50, she was into it. So I'm guessing she simply relocated and resumed her activities elsewhere.
A killer's troubling behavior can alert potential victims. But for some unfortunate citizens of Vienna, Austria, there were no such clues. The motivation was obscure, the location unusual, the perpetrators unexpected.
This was a shock around the world, what really happened here in Vienna.
Max Edelbacher heads criminal investigations in Vienna's South District. In 1989, he and his team were called to the Lyons General Hospital.
This is one of the largest hospitals, especially dealing with very elder people.
In the preceding 3 years, an alarming number of elderly patients were dying in just one wing, Pavilion 5. Investigators soon found out why.
It's so terrible because you never would expect in a hospital that this is a murder station. No?
Angels of death. Nurses who kill patients. usually act alone and never tell anyone. Not so in this case.
Angels of death are often motivated by sympathy for their victims or a lust for attention. In Pavilion 5, the motivation was very different.
There was a lot of stress, a lot of overwork for these nurses. And in this time, in 88 and 89, more than 60 to 65 people were in one room. And in the night shift, only 2 nurses could care for these people.
Nicht schon wieder.
Elderly patients were demanding. Too demanding.
They have an alarm next to their bed, and they were using this alarm each 5 or 10 minutes.
For one group of nurses, the solution was eternal silence.
Ich hatte noch keine 5 Minuten Pause.
And they became angry, and then they started to select such persons who were really active in calling them.
Ringleader Gertrude Wagner and 3 others had a pact made even crueler by their methods. In Vienna, Austria, forensic scientist Professor Johann Mislewitz would uncover one of his country's worst serial murders and the unusual murder weapon, water.
A little push was sufficient to put them to death, to obstruct the breathing mechanism.
The nurses were drowning their patients.
Well, they brought the victim into a comfortable position for them. They pressed the tongue down with a spatula and poured the water into the airways.
Drowning is a form of asphyxia. There will be an initial shock and an attempt to hold one's breath. When they can no longer hold it, they're going to exhale that breath and inhale water. That is going to be incredibly uncomfortable.
They say about 45 to 60 minutes it took the patients to die. They started to groan, they flattened their breathing, they became pale gray, and after about an hour they were dead.
The technique should have defied suspicion. Many patients already suffered from pulmonary edema, fluid in the lungs.
That was assumed by them that they could get away with it because you can't distinguish between liquid from pulmonary edema and liquid from tap water.
For almost 3 years, they did get away with it, and with other methods, overdoses of insulin and sedatives.
Then they became like sisters of death, and they became more and more safe in their relationship because nothing happened. There were the kings and queens. They decided about life and death.
Although the nurses would cite their motivation as frustration, the scale and daring suggests another factor to criminal profiler Candice DeLong.
I think what it has to do is the risk. Can I do this horrible thing? Can I cross this line society says if I cross, it's all over for me? right in front of other people and get away with it, and that thrill, that extra risk, is why they do it.
The killing might have continued had the nurses not been so proud.
Bragging is a common behavior that we see on the part of serial killers, in particular sadistic serial killers. And in particular, when you have a group of them together, they're proud of what they do.
A witness overheard their boasting and reported to police. When questioned, 2 of the nurses confessed.
This was very interesting with these 2 ladies, Wagner and Gruber. It was like falling stones from their shoulders or their body. They wanted to speak.
Police and hospital administrators could scarcely believe the magnitude of the murders.
At first, nobody wanted to accept that the problem could be so large, that the police had to investigate more than 300 cases.
Exhumations and postmortems were difficult. Evidence of drowning often lost to decomposition. But enough was collected to prove 38 cases of homicide, with many other cases indeterminable.
This was extreme. In America and in some other continents, we had such cases that nurses killed somebody, but I think this was one of the largest cases worldwide. And this was a shock around the world, what really happened here in Vienna.
And just as rare, 4 angels of death working together.
There have been cases of murder in hospital before concerning hospital personnel, but only in this case there were 4 people knowing each other.
Nurses Waltraud Wagner and Irina Leidolf were convicted of multiple murders. They served life sentences. The other 2 were convicted of manslaughter and attempted murder and sentenced for 15 years. In the hands of deadly women, it's a lethal weapon. As the sick and gullible discovered in Washington State.
Linda Hazard was a leader. She was a speech maker. She commanded attention wherever she went. I mean, if she was somebody today, she'd be a household name. She'd be a superstar today. Dr. Hazard. I mean, it is the perfect name for a woman who perpetrates this type of crime. A doctor named Hazard. I mean, it's perfect.
When crime writer Greg Olson moved to Olalla, Washington, he found the perfect subject.
Turn of the century medicine, quackery, greed, everything that you would ever imagine that you think is contemporary to today was going on back then, of course. And it happened here in Nowheresville.
In 1911, the sick and the wealthy were lured to these backwaters from Europe and the US on a promise. They came to cure their ills. 2 wealthy sisters, Claire and Dora Williamson from England, were typical of Dr. Hazard's patients.
Is everything suitable?
Yes, thank you.
The girls, they came, they thought this was going to be a holiday in the country. They were excited about going. They couldn't wait to get to Olalla. They had no idea what was in store for them.
For an upfront fee of $100 a week, the sisters would receive only a starvation diet and a place to die.
The diet that she developed was very strenuous. I mean, it was limited to 2 8-ounce glasses of a broth a day. Either a tomato or an asparagus broth was what she gave her patients.
Very good. Well done. As a rule, Fasting has been known throughout the centuries as a way to purify one's body and therefore purify one's mind. There is no medical benefit to starving. Starvation causes death.
Common sense should have warned patients off the treatment within days, but Dr. Hazard's power usually prevailed.
The power of her mind and the power of her conviction was intoxicating for people. I mean, people would listen to her, and you could not help but believe what she was saying.
The sisters, like many others, persevered.
After we have gotten over the first day or two, maybe even 3, we are no longer going to feel hunger. We're going to at first feel a bit alert when we're starting to burn all the fats. But as we get through the fat and start burning off the protein, we're going to begin to get listless.
I think Dr. Linda Hazard was a serial killer, and a sadistic one at that. You don't even have to be a doctor to know if somebody is only fed diluted tomato juice on a daily basis that they eventually will die. She knew this, and she continued on with her experiment.
Dr. Linda Hazard's dietary experiments are remembered to this day.
I didn't know what a concentration camp was till after World War II, and then I saw pictures of it, and that's what those people looked like.
As a little girl, 80-year-old Lucienne Pendarvis had some frightening visitors. Escapees from the Hazard Clinic.
My mother used to feed them. Because they had to go right by her door, and she couldn't stand it. She would give them something to eat. They were just skin and bone, and their clothes just hung on them. Their eyes were sunk in, and they used to, we have what's called huckleberries here, and they would just strip those in the fall. Any kind of berry there was out there, they were eating it.
First, our immune systems are going to start to malfunction. And along with that, we're going to have this profound weakness. And then, eventually, we're not going to be able to maintain our blood pressure.
They grew weaker and weaker, but each time that they would complain about it or ask about it, Dr. Hazard would tell them, the cure is imminent, just a few more days. Hang on just a bit longer, and you'll have perfect, robust health. It'll just come in an instant.
Fortunately, the Pendarvis family didn't succumb to Dr. Hazard's spell.
And she also used to come down to the house because my dad had ulcers and he was sick, and she was going to cure him. But my mother and father had no part of what she was doing.
Claire and Dora Williamson consumed only broth for 2 whole months. Dr. Hazard's allure was finally overtaken by the will to live.
Claire knew this is my last chance. If I don't get out of here, I'm gonna die. And if I die, my sister's going to die. So Claire, somehow, we don't know how she even had the strength, somehow she crawled out of that attic and got out there to the woods and made it halfway down the hill before she realized she could go no further.
Feeble and disoriented, Claire's escape was short-lived.
Claire!
But when she heard Dr. Hazard's voice, it just like a spell, something came over her and she realized, I can't fight this. Unfortunately for Claire, there'd be no saving her. There was no end to Dr. Hazard's, really, her skill, if you want to call it, or her evil. I mean, not only did she treat these patients as their physician, she also acted as a coroner and did the post-mortem examinations on each one of her patients.
Dr. Hazard's failures were never registered. To the medical world, her victims died of various diseases.
The fact that the patient weighed less than 50 pounds was never on the certificate. It was always cirrhosis of the liver or something like that would be listed as a cause of death.
Today, the Doctor's House of Cruelty still stands. Its secrets not altogether lost.
You know, in this house, right here in this very spot, she was involved in actually cooking or preparing something. And so it's a strange feeling knowing that you're part of history living here in this house. The original bathtub is in there, and so apparently that's where she performed autopsies, in that bathtub.
The Jones family think they may be sharing this place with Dr. Hazard's victims.
It's funny, sometimes you'll be standing here washing dishes and it just out of the corner of your eye, it's like there's a face just right there in the corner of the window. And so you'll look up and there's nobody there. It's eerie. There's always somebody here in the house with you, even if the house is empty and it's just you.
But Claire Williamson's death was a turning point in Dr. Hazard's career. Although there's no record of how, Dora managed to get a message out and was rescued. Dr. Hazard was convicted of manslaughter and jailed for 18 months. But she would be back.
This is what's sort of outrageous, really. She leaves town and then she comes back. And the local people who knew all about this just sort of looked the other way.
Within 8 years, Dr. Hazard had renewed her practice. Her starvation diet again on the menu. There were more deaths.
The number is somewhere between 20 and 40 people, and we think some of them were disposed of here in this ravine. It's very deep. It's about probably a 100-foot drop from the house down. And, you know, wild animals, bears, all sorts of things have been out here. Cougars, you know, we have a lot of wildlife out here. So it's very possible if somebody was dumped down there that the body was dragged away.
The killing only stopped when the doctor herself became ill.
Well, this is kind of sweet, really, in the end. Linda Hazard got pneumonia, and she told the world, I'm going to cure myself by using the fast.
Justice came at her own hand.
And she fasted for, I think, 25 days before she basically killed herself and died by her own treatment. I think she had something to prove. I believe she did everything for the cure, that she really believed that by bringing this to people, that she was going to change the way we deal with medicine.
For criminal profiler Candice DeLong, it was delusion that killed Linda Hazard and her patients.
A delusion is a strong belief in something, an idea, a concept that has no basis in fact, and the person believes it despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary.
In the 1880s, in Liverpool, England, a group of women ran an extraordinary cooperative.
I think everyone is familiar with the concept of women sticking together in times of trouble, but you normally assume that it's going to be a helping in a pleasant way.
Retired police prosecutor Angela Braben spent a lifetime fighting crime in English courts. But the case that fascinates her most happened before she was born.
You've got a group of women living together and they're forming a web, a syndicate of murder. And they're investing in death.
The plan was simple. Insure everyone in their immediate acquaintance, then kill them one by one.
There were 4 women who were actually killing. And then there were 5 or 6 others who were concerning themselves solely with the insurance.
The women's cunning netted them a small fortune and turned the British insurance industry upside down.
I admire them in a strange sort of way. They worked out the insurance rates, how would they get the best rates for different people. They knew all the rules and regulations of the insurance and burial clubs, virtually backwards as far as I could work out.
Together, they formed a predator pack. More common among male perpetrators, the female pack can be just as formidable.
The pack mentality can certainly take over in a situation where you have a number of perpetrators with a common goal, to obtain money. That money makes people do all kinds of things.
No one was spared. Siblings, husbands, strangers. Like young boarder Maggie Jennings.
There's probably one person in the group that's the leader, the alpha female. The one who came up with the idea, who drew up the plans, who gave the orders, and everybody else pretty much followed in line.
In Liverpool, the pack's leader was Catherine Flanagan. Second in command, her sister, Margaret Higgins. Their method? Poison.
Arsenic obtained from flypapers. It was very readily available. All little shops would have the flypapers. You'd soak them in water and obtain a liquid, which then could very easily be added to the food. And women being the ones who provide the food, they could mix what they wished.
Chronic ingestion of small amounts of arsenic gives very unusual symptoms. It might be the onset of intermittent abdominal pain, diarrhea, numbness and tingling in the extremities.
Arsenic was not only easily available to the Liverpool sisterhood, its symptoms were much like common illnesses of Victorian England.
The slums of Liverpool at the time would have been hideous places. There was no public sanitation. There wasn't running water. People were crowded into small areas, and disease is a very natural outcome to those circumstances.
No suspicions were raised when victims like Maggie Jennings died in the prime of life.
The doctors were expecting to find the diseases of poverty, malnutrition, and insanitary conditions. The women, therefore, made sure that the doctors found something that would fit with what the doctors were expecting.
With every death came an insurance payout to one of the group, to be later shared.
Maggie Jennings, for example, was insured for over £112, and those insurances were started approximately 12 months before she died. So that was a very good rate of return for an investment.
A good return indeed, when a laborer's weekly wage was less than £1, not even a couple of dollars. With premiums of just a few pennies a month, unscrupulous citizens could use England's life insurance companies for murderous gain.
The insurance man would go walked from house to house and penny here and tuppence there. And overall, one must assume that the insurance companies made a profit. But I suspect that in this particular area of Liverpool, they probably made a loss.
The women in the Liverpool syndicate were illiterate, but that didn't hinder business. Insurance brokers at the time were eager to sign up customers for their own commissions.
They would be paid 1 year's premiums as their commission. So obviously the more people they could be encouraged to insure, the better. And if somebody was not sure about the right answers, they would make the answers up as they went along.
This confluence of poison, poor hygiene, and exuberant sales pitches created the perfect storm of murder.
Victims were chosen depending on how old they were they ill? Could they be hastened? Could they get insurance for them? And if so, how much? And they would choose 2 or 3 victims a year and simply kill them.
Greed can become a monster that feeds on itself. And it's one of the toughest things in the world to keep a lid on.
The Liverpool syndicate operated undetected for at least 4 years. Their final tally would shock the country.
It's very complicated to explain who killed who. And so this is a little diagram which shows you've got the 2 sisters here. Certainly they killed Thomas Higgins, that's one husband gone. They probably killed the other husband, John Flanagan, as well. They certainly killed a son, a daughter-in-law, daughter-in-law's mother, a lodger, a little stepdaughter of 12, neighbours, friends, anyone else really that they could get their hands on.
It's believed the syndicate murdered at least 17 people for profit. If there was any remorse, it seemed lost in a web of shared liability.
In a gang or a pack committing a crime, whether it's one crime or several ongoing crimes, the sense of guilt, if there is any, is definitely shared. And it's something that one member of the group can take some kind of comfort in knowing, well, I didn't really do this alone. I was the group. The power of the group can be very, very strong.
In 1883, after 4 years, the group's power was finally extinguished. A suspicious relative convinced authorities to test the body of Margaret's husband. Police found arsenic, then pieced together a long trail of death. Enough evidence was found to convict Catherine Flanagan and her sister Margaret Higgins. Newspaper reports describe how they hung side by side from the gallows. The others escaped prosecution. A shocked government clamped down on insurance practices, fearing the Liverpool syndicate was just part of a poison epidemic.
The effect on the government was like dynamite, because they realised that this was not a very small-scale murder confined to one area of one city. They realised that it was probably happening all over the country in similar areas.
Just as shocking to the English public was the fact the Liverpool women could kill those near and dear to them, even.
We don't have a lot of women on death row, but that's where she is, and she holds Bible studies, Bible sessions within death row.
In 1990, journalist Martha Quillen found the story of her career in North Carolina.
People thought she was such a fine person, and how could she have done this? And yet, the reality of what she had done was so brutal and so cruel that people were just fascinated in this dual personality in this one woman.
To the world, Blanche Taylor Moore was a caring Christian, a compassionate woman, led by spiritual commitment. So when her boyfriend, Raymond Reed, was hospitalized, no one was surprised at Blanche's constant care.
She was sort of beloved, I think, on the floor where he stayed. And the nurses testified that they thought she was a wonderful person and very caring, and that, you know, Raymond was very lucky to have someone like that come in to see him.
Raymond was diagnosed with Guillain-Barré syndrome.
Guillain-Barré syndrome is also known as French polio. It is an autoimmune disorder. The symptoms are muscle weakness, nerve tingling, progressive fatigue, and eventually may even lead to difficulty breathing.
Despite the best care, Raymond was destined to die. Again and again.
He actually died and was revived. His heart failed and he had kidney failure and died, and they revived him.
Several times, Raymond died a clinical death, losing heartbeat and respiration. But each time, expert medical staff pulled him back from the brink. Each time, Blanche was waiting with more comfort.
Apparently she took great care in preparing this food because hospital food was just not good enough for the man that she loved.
But whenever Raymond regained strength, there was another relapse.
Think of the worst flu you've ever had, multiply it by 100, and then lengthen it by 2 or 3 hours.
And another resuscitation. A terrifying roller coaster of life and death.
He's confused and frightened and, thinking he's going to die, and then he begins to get better, and then he starts to die again. And they say it's a horrible death. It's a really horrible way to die.
Raymond Reed died the final time in October 1986.
In my experience of writing about murders and covering murder trials, I think they all think that they're smarter than everybody else, and they're not going to be caught.
Within 2 years, Blanche had moved on into the arms of Reverend Dwight Moore.
He was a minister who courted her and pursued her, and she finally married him.
It seemed a match made in heaven. But during the honeymoon, the Reverend fell deathly ill. Although the symptoms mimicked Guillain-Barré syndrome, the speed of onset raised suspicions.
He happened to end up in a hospital where they had the smarts to test him for arsenic poisoning. And when they found huge doses of arsenic in his system, they immediately suspected that she had given it to him.
Reverend Moore's constitution foiled Blanche's plan. Against the odds, he survived.
Investigators later said that he had survived the largest dose of arsenic any human was ever known to have survived. So she was just unlucky. She poisoned someone whose system was stronger than she was.
Blanche would be charged with assault, and police probed further, exhuming the body of Raymond Reed. The chief medical examiner in North Carolina, John Butts, MD, exposed one of the state's most audacious murders.
This is graphing of the quantities of arsenic that were found in Mr. Reed's hair, and this tells us that that initial illness was a result of arsenic poisoning, but also tells us that he continued to receive arsenic while he was in the hospital.
Blanche was arrested and charged with murder. During her trial, Jurors heard how Blanche killed her victim with kindness.
All evidence indicates that she was bringing poison to the hospital and disguised with or contained within some of the food that she fed him, and continued to poison him in the hospital until ultimately he died.
During her sentencing phase, the state actually argued that this murder, that his murder should be viewed as a serial murder because she killed him over and over again.
And there were more suspicions.
At one point, it looked like they were going to dig up everybody in about 3 counties and test them for arsenic. Anybody that had known Blanche Taylor Moore at any time in their lives was going to be tested.
We exhumed 5 individuals. They were individuals who it was believed that Mrs. Moore had some connection with. Obviously, they were deceased individuals, and there were symptoms or circumstances surrounding the death that raised the possibility of arsenic poisoning.
Traces of arsenic were found in the bodies of Blanche's first husband and her father. Although cleared of involvement with her father's death, some believe their troubled relationship set a young Blanche on a course of revenge.
We know that he was a womanizer. We know that he left the family. I think she replicated that sort of tortured relationship with the other men that she became involved with during her life.
It is not unusual that when they grow up, the problems that they had with their father, psychologically and emotionally, will spill over into their current relationships with men. They may love their husband, but as soon as things turn south or they are made angry by him, he may represent bad daddy, and he will be the target of their wrath. She may kill her father over and over and over again.
Convicted of one murder count and charged with another, Blanche Taylor Moore awaits execution on death row. "200 years after Elizabeth's reign, another deadly woman would become legend in the French Quarter of New Orleans.
The incident had such an impact on the city that for many years, many people wouldn't walk on the same side of the street as the house. Others avoided the block completely.
Amateur historian and tour guide Kalila Smith makes a regular stop at 1140 Royal Street.
The door was bolted and locked from the outside. They could hear screams and cries coming from within. The fortunate ones were dead.
It was here in 1834 what's believed to be the city's most horrendous crime was discovered.
I think that the history in New Orleans is far more bizarre than anything any fictional writer could possibly come up with.
Madame Delphine Lalaurie was an A-list socialite with money and connections.
Her husband was a surgeon, a very prominent surgeon in the city, and she was from a very wealthy French family. They were best known in the city for their lavish cocktail parties that they would throw, entertaining the upper echelon in the city, and they threw them quite frequently.
But Madame Lalaurie was not all she seemed.
As she was preparing for one of her cocktail parties, she was being attended to by a little 12-year-old slave girl by the name of Leah. Leah accidentally pulled a madame's hair as she was combing it. And in a fit of rage, Madame Lalaurie pulled out a bullwhip and proceeded to beat this little girl.
Trying to flee the beating, the little girl plunged to her death in the courtyard below.
Madame Lalaurie was brought before the courts for the death of this child, but because she was so influential, because she was rubbing elbows with all the upper echelon, she was given a mere slap on the wrist, a mere $300 fine.
Madame Lalaurie's notoriety would have ended there if it wasn't for a fire soon after. The story is still talked about by firemen today.
Well, that night, the alarm came in for our house, and when the firemen got there, they found a fire in the kitchen, and the slave told the firemen to go up to the third floor of the house and check it out.
The door was bolted and locked from the outside, yet they could hear screams and cries from within. Seasoned firemen who had obviously had experience with death before literally fell to their knees vomiting from the stench of death inside the room.
The firemen found a house of horror. It took a house fire to lay bare Madame LaLaurie, the New Orleans socialite, as a serial killer.
Upon entering one of the apartments, the most appalling spectacle met their eyes.
Corpses, people, slaves that were chained to the wall.
7 slaves, more or less horribly mutilated, were seen suspended by the neck, with their limbs apparently stretched and torn from one extremity to the other.
They found some that were buried under the flooring, mutilated bodies that were cut up.
Language is powerless and inadequate to give a proper conception of the horror which is a scene like this must have inspired.
It was just a real tragedy up there that they found.
That Madame LaLaurie had blood on her hands seems beyond doubt. Her motivation is less clear. One theory suggests Madame LaLaurie and her doctor husband were doing their own scientific research.
Well, people used to dig up graves and dissect bodies. This wasn't usually something done for a bizarre sacrifice. This was done out of human curiosity.
In the 1830s, knowledge of anatomy was limited. A curious but warped mind might see powerless slaves as lab rats.
And back then, we didn't even know precisely how blood circulated and how the body worked. It was fascinating.
That might have been the excuse, a quest for medical knowledge, but to be performing it on live people? No, it goes way beyond that.
The scant surviving evidence also points to another motivation.
The only word that comes to mind is a sadist. A sadist derives pleasure from inflicting pain on another individual. The pain can be physical or emotional or sexual. But the sadist delivers pleasure.
And still, there's another possibility.
The truth of the matter is that no matter how cruel her behavior, it might have been aimed at trying to solve a crime.
Lester Sullivan, archivist at Xavier University of Louisiana, thinks Madame LaLaurie might have been conducting her own cruel criminal investigation.
Shortly before the mansion caught on fire, there had been a rebellion on one of the plantations her family owned, downriver in St. Bernard Parish, in which her own mother was killed. Obviously, if she's got people chained and she's interrogating them under duress, probably involving torture and such, I mean, it takes a certain kind of ruthlessness to take this kind of action, to take the law into one's own hands.
It was some sort of distorted, displaced anger for some reason that she would go to such extremes to mutilate people the way she did.
Sadist, scientist, or avenger? We may never know.
Somehow the LaLauries escaped. Now, it's a mystery what happened to them. Many people believe that they wound up going down to the river and jumping ship. Some people say they even went back to Paris.
Whatever Madame LaLaurie's motivation, One thing, more than anything else, made her secret slayings possible: power.